One of the clearest signs a woman misses you more deeply than she admits is surprisingly small on the surface. She finds little reasons to step back into your life. Not dramatic confessions, not emotional paragraphs, just subtle moments that seem casual at first glance. A random meme, a reaction to your story, a quick question about something she could have easily figured out herself. Most men overlook these moments because they appear insignificant, but emotionally they often reveal much more than direct words ever could. When someone truly misses you, silence begins feeling heavy to them. Your absence slowly becomes noticeable in quiet moments throughout their day. Even if pride tells her to stay distant, emotions naturally search for connection. That is why she creates harmless excuses to reach out instead of directly admitting how she feels. Saying, "I miss you," requires vulnerability, and vulnerability always carries the risk of rejection. So instead, she hides the emotion behind something smaller and safer. But people rarely search for reasons to reconnect with someone they have emotionally forgotten. When a woman keeps finding little doorways back into your world, it often means your presence still occupies a meaningful space inside her mind and heart. When a woman misses you, but is trying to protect her emotions, she rarely reaches out in a direct way. Most of the time, her messages are designed to feel casual and emotionally safe. She may ask about a movie you once watched together, react to a story you posted, or send something small that reminds her of you. On the surface, these moments appear ordinary, but emotionally they often carry much more meaning than people realize. Human beings naturally avoid unnecessary emotional risk, especially when pride and fear are involved. That is why indirect communication becomes so common when feelings still exist beneath the surface. Think about it carefully. When someone has truly moved on emotionally, they usually stop searching for opportunities to reconnect. Their mind no longer circles back to you throughout the day. But when feelings remain, even small reminders become emotionally significant. A song, a place, a joke, or a memory suddenly creates the urge to reach out again. And because openly admitting, "I miss you," feels too vulnerable, she disguises that emotion behind harmless conversation instead. The message may seem small, but the emotional motivation behind it is often much bigger. Silence became uncomfortable enough that a part of her needed to feel your presence again, even if only briefly. One important detail many people fail to notice is that these small moments of contact usually do not happen only once. When a woman genuinely misses you, she often finds repeated ways to quietly reconnect over time. Maybe days pass without hearing from her, then suddenly another reaction appears, another message, another harmless excuse to briefly step back into your world again. These moments are rarely random. Human attention naturally returns to the people who still occupy emotional space inside us. And when someone repeatedly searches for connection, even in subtle ways, it often reveals feelings they are trying very hard not to expose directly. What makes this behavior interesting is that the conversation itself is not always the main goal. Sometimes she does not even continue talking for very long after reaching out. That confuses many men because they expect deeper conversation if feelings still exist. But emotionally, her purpose may simply be to feel your presence again for a moment, to remind herself the connection between you still exists somewhere. People who miss someone deeply do not always know how to fully return emotionally. Sometimes they only know they do not want the bond to disappear completely. That is why these small messages matter so much. They are emotional breadcrumbs, quietly revealing that you still cross her mind more often than she wants to admit openly. Sometimes the people who seem the most distant are actually paying the closest attention. This is something many men misunderstand completely, because they assume silence automatically means emotional detachment. But emotional distance and emotional absence are not always the same thing. A woman can stop texting you regularly, stop calling, and even appear as though she has completely moved on, while still quietly keeping track of your life from a distance. In today's world, distance rarely removes access completely, because social media allows people to remain emotionally connected without directly communicating. You post a story, and somehow she views it almost immediately. You upload a picture, and she notices even if she never reacts publicly. Small changes in your life somehow seem to reach her awareness without you understanding how, and eventually you begin asking yourself an important question. If she no longer cares, why is she still paying attention? The answer is simple. People naturally observe what still matters emotionally to them. When someone has fully let go, curiosity fades naturally. Your life becomes emotionally irrelevant to them. But when feelings remain unresolved, attention continues quietly in the background. She watches because a part of her still wants to know how you are doing, whether you are happy, and whether someone else has replaced the emotional space she once occupied in your life. What many people fail to understand is that watching someone from a distance can feel emotionally safer than directly reconnecting with them. A woman may still miss you deeply while avoiding direct contact because observing your life through small updates protects her from vulnerability. She can quietly stay connected without risking rejection, awkwardness, or reopening emotional wounds she has been trying to manage internally. That is why social media often becomes an emotional window for unresolved feelings. She can see your life moving forward while remaining emotionally hidden in the background. And the more she watches, the more memories begin resurfacing naturally. A picture reminds her of a moment you shared together. A song in your story pulls her mind back toward conversations she thought she had already moved past emotionally. Suddenly, your presence returns to her thoughts again, even without direct interaction. This is how emotional memory works. Feelings rarely disappear instantly just because communication stopped. Sometimes they simply become quieter and hide beneath daily distractions until something small awakens them again. That is why silent attention often carries emotional meaning. Curiosity does not survive where emotional connection has completely disappeared. When someone repeatedly checks your world from a distance, it usually reveals that part of their emotional attachment to you still remains active beneath the silence. There is something incredibly powerful about shared memories, because memories keep emotional connections alive long after relationships change. When a woman misses you deeply, those memories begin resurfacing in subtle ways during conversations. She may suddenly mention a place you once visited together, laugh about an old inside joke, or remind you of a random moment that seemed insignificant at the time, but still stayed with her emotionally. On the surface, it can sound harmless and casual, almost like simple nostalgia. But emotionally, people rarely revisit memories connected to someone who no longer holds emotional meaning in their life. Think about how memory works. Out of thousands of experiences and people we encounter throughout life, our minds naturally hold on to the moments that carried emotional intensity. So when she repeatedly brings up memories involving you, it often means those experiences still occupy space inside her emotionally. Sometimes she may not even realize what she is doing consciously. Something in her environment triggered the memory, and before she could stop herself, your name, your laughter, or your connection resurfaced in her mind again. Memories become emotional shortcuts back to feelings people thought they had already buried, and that is why they reveal far more than most words ever could. Sometimes a woman will hide her feelings so carefully that her behavior starts looking completely opposite to what she actually feels inside. This is where many people become confused because they mistake emotional distance for emotional indifference. Her replies may become shorter. Her tone may feel colder than before. She may act more controlled, more guarded, more emotionally reserved around you. Naturally, this makes you assume the connection has disappeared completely. But in reality, strong feelings often create emotional walls, not because someone feels nothing, but because they are trying very hard not to feel too much. True indifference usually looks effortless. When someone genuinely no longer cares, they do not need to force emotional distance because there is no emotional struggle happening internally anymore. But when feelings still exist, emotional control requires effort. That is why coldness can sometimes become a form of self-protection. She is trying to prevent old emotions from resurfacing too strongly. Yet despite the distance, you may still notice small actions revealing that she still cares. She checks on you during difficult moments, pays attention to details about your life, or quietly remains present in subtle ways. Actions often reveal emotional truth much more clearly than carefully controlled words ever can, because genuine care naturally leaks through behavior over time. Another subtle sign that a woman still misses you is when curiosity about your love life quietly begins appearing in conversations. Rarely will she ask directly in an emotionally vulnerable way. Instead, the questions usually sound casual, playful, or harmless on the surface. She might jokingly ask if you are talking to someone new, comment about another woman appearing in your pictures, or casually bring up relationships just to observe your reaction. But emotionally, these questions often reveal something much deeper happening underneath. Curiosity about your romantic life usually appears when emotional attachment has not completely disappeared. When someone has fully moved on emotionally, they typically stop wondering who occupies your attention. But when feelings remain, even quietly, the thought of someone else replacing the place they once held creates emotional tension inside them. She begins paying closer attention to subtle details. Who comments on your posts? Who appears in your stories? Whether your energy feels different around someone else. And while she may try to hide any emotional reaction, feelings often reveal themselves through small pauses, changes in tone, or subtle shifts in behavior. Jealousy is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it appears as simple curiosity, because emotionally part of her is still trying to understand whether there is any remaining space for her inside your life. One of the clearest patterns that reveals lingering emotions is this. She never fully disappears from your life. Even after long periods of silence, somehow her presence quietly returns again. Maybe weeks pass without hearing from her, and just when you assume she has completely moved on, her name suddenly appears again through a small message, a reaction, a birthday wish, or a quick congratulations about something happening in your life. These moments may seem ordinary, but emotionally they often reveal something much deeper. People who have truly detached emotionally rarely feel the need to maintain small connections over time. What makes these quiet reappearances meaningful is their consistency. She may step back emotionally, create distance, or disappear temporarily, but she never completely closes the door between you. A tiny emotional thread always remains connecting her back to your world somehow. And usually, these moments happen when you least expect them, almost as if something inside her could not fully let the connection disappear. Feelings and decisions are not always aligned. A person can move forward externally while still carrying emotional attachment internally. That is why she keeps resurfacing quietly in small ways. Not because she necessarily knows what she wants completely, but because part of her still struggles to let the emotional connection between you fully fade away. And when you step back and look at all these signs together, a deeper pattern begins to appear. Small excuses to contact you, silent attention on social media, memories resurfacing in conversation, emotional walls mixed with quiet care, curiosity about your love life, and the fact that she never fully disappears. None of these behaviors alone guarantee that someone wants to rebuild a relationship immediately, but together, they often reveal something emotionally important. The connection still exists somewhere inside her, even if pride, fear, timing, or uncertainty prevent her from admitting it openly. Human emotions are rarely simple. People often try to protect themselves by hiding feelings behind silence, distance, or controlled behavior. But genuine emotional attachment has a difficult time disappearing completely. It leaks through actions, attention, curiosity, and memories over time. That is why the people who miss you most are not always the loudest about it. Sometimes they are the quietest. They stay present in subtle ways because part of them is still emotionally connected to the chapter you once shared together. And perhaps that is the most important truth of all. When someone truly cared about you deeply, traces of that connection rarely vanish overnight. Feelings fade slowly, memories linger quietly, and emotions often continue speaking long after words stop. Sometimes the clearest sign a woman misses you is simply the fact that no matter how much time passes, she never fully lets you disappear from her world completely. Do well to subscribe because you are important.